Hi, welcome back, friends. This is Cyndi Silva. I'm with Jeannie Zandi, and we're continuing our conversations. And thank you again, Jeannie, for making time for this.
You bet. Thank you for having me, Cyndi. That's so fun.
It is fun. I've really been enjoying it, and so have my listeners. And thank you to you as well for sharing with your community. I'm really pleased that more people are getting access to what gets shared between us. And this week, we're talking about relationship and healing in relationship. So I love the topic, and I'm curious as to why you chose that. This week I asked you what we would talk about, and that was what came up, and it came up pretty quickly. So you must have been thinking about this.
Well, I have a whole 8-month course on relating, and this is one of the topics that we're going to cover for a month. And so it's kind of cooking. And I've also really spent my life using relationship as path. I'm a serial monogamist. I started when I was 13, and really have been my intelligence, my curiosity, and my psyche have all been very tuned to not just making relationship work, but using the container of relationship to actually reflect, well, of course, to enjoy, have fun, share love, all that good stuff, but also using the container, the bond, and what's reflected to really plumb the depths of my own being, my own embodiment, my own wholeness, my own capacity to be sovereign in relationship, to grow up, to take responsibility, to clean up, as they say, to find places where maybe I have bad behavior, to learn new skills, all of that sort of like relationship as the blacksmith's forge, where the sword, the blade of the sword is kind of honed, or we could also say like the the clamshell within which the tiny grain of sand annoys the clam into building this beautiful pearl.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful. It makes me think right away of how some relationships are in our life and they're really fun and easy, and we get to tap into the juicier parts of ourselves that we like. And then other relationships come into our life that are more difficult and have the rougher edges, and we get sanded down a little bit by those. And those are just as valuable.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm my as usual, my 8-headed Hydra mind is just, there's all these avenues in here. And what you just said about some relationships that are easy and some relationships that are challenging, and then the variety of relationships that we can have. And I think because I'm tuned so toward relating is a practice ground. Relating for me is in this moment with these beings, following what's true. Obviously, it's not like a going out of myself to focus on others and forget the truth and myself, kind of codependence and merging. But the beauty of everything, and this includes, I was thinking about this morning because I had a conversation with my sweetie about the dishes. And I realized that I handle and put away my dishes as though I'm handling and putting away God's belongings, with reverence, with mindfulness, the beauty of the dishes, how long I have had them. So even inanimate objects have this possibility of pouring love and consciousness into the moment, and it being almost like an exercise ground. Any kind of relating, whether it's my mail carrier or the person making a latte for me, or my close relationships. And that sort of practice ground it's like there are very few of us who don't have any contact with humans. But even if we don't have contact with humans, animals, plants, objects, how we are moving through our space with reverence, I think, is one of the opportunities of relationship, and an invitation to, in ever increasing ways, pull our attention off of our blah blah into a present moment bow and entering the space reverently. So in that, healing in relationship for me is growing in relationship, awakening in relationship, all of that. It's just such an opportunity for practice. Like when I used to go to Aikido, my sensei, we would say something at the end of Aikido practice, if my memory serves me, domo arigato gozaimashita. And my Aikido sensei said that loosely translates into, and someone can call you and who speaks Japanese and correct us. He may have been pulling the wool over our eyes, but he said, how lucky I am that I'm such a schmo and I have people like you to practice with. It's like this humble gratitude, and that Aikido practice and the Aikido sword practice. Then when you go out into the world, there are all these people to practice with, and animals and trees and plants and things. And so just at that level, and I'll pause in a sec because I can feel like all the pinballs kind of lining up here. So I'll pause. If you have anything to say about that aspect,
Yeah, because you've already stretched my perspective, because when we launched into the conversation, I went right into healing in relationship as in other humans, and now I see it differently in that you're talking about relating to dishes, inanimate objects, and basically it comes down to relating to life, and that is the purpose that consciousness or creator or source or God had in finding itself in these separate forms so it could relate to itself. So when we put our attention on relating, we're right there at the edge where this creative force is exchanging information with itself, gathering data on itself so it can explore all the infinite possibilities of knowing itself through form and relation.
Yeah, it sure does seem so. And life on earth is relating. It's
Absolutely.
If I have an itch on my face and I scratch it, oh, there's relating going on. Like we can't get away from it. Might as well inquire into it and make it a study, since it's so very available. And when I think about healing or growing or awakening, that level of kind of practice, can I bring my whole heart to this moment? Can I bring my whole presence to this moment? If I cannot, why not? And I have certainly been curious from an early age about the places where I'm not fully full-hearted, wholehearted, all here, moving from love, moving from clarity, moving from unity rather than some kind of and that points to the mirroring aspect of relationship, that in the reflection of how my relationships are going, I can see reflected maybe some of the places where I am not yet moving from clarity, because it sure does seem that as we move from clarity, as we move from the Tao, so to speak, as we move with wholeness, cleanly, according to the truth, that things tend to go better. And there is something so delicious, there can be this sort of one way, like, I am here to love. I'm not looking for what I'm going to get. I'm using all of the interactions I have to express the heart that I am, to find out what's frightening about that, etc. That kind of self-responsibility really helps. But then over the top is when we enter relationships where both beings are having a party expressing the heart, because then it's just light upon light, like exponential. When your puppy loves you and you love your puppy,
Yeah.
The love spills all over, and it spills out beyond just two, when we are kind of feasting at God's feast table, which is, to me, what Earth's potential is, right? And so that kind of creed or commitment, I will bring love to where I relate. I will bring clarity. I will look at the places where I'm not and start to inquire into those. And then I will bring love. And in the places where love is also being brought, what a festival, what a sweetness. And that's how I see the work that I do. It's like we all bring love to the table, to the best of our ability, and hold space for each other's evolution. Yay.
Yay.
And
Thank you
then
for that work.
I'll pause for a sec. Go ahead.
Thank you for that. No, I feel like as I'm listening, the piece that I'm doing in my work in teaching Qigong is helping people prepare their field for that experience. Because when we come to a relationship with stuff in our energy field that hasn't been digested, we think we're relating to the other person, but we're relating to that stuff bumping up against their stuff. And we don't even have a chance at relating directly because we're going through these walls, firewalls.
Yeah.
But so the clearing, the practices to get clear before entering a conversation, especially a difficult one, but any conversation, any kind of relating, is to give yourself that gift of showing up where you can be receptive and present. And also that gift is to the one you're relating with, or the tree or the bird or the whatever, the sky. But yeah, there are things we can do to show up in preparation for that kind of relating.
Yeah, which is healing. It's, I know, and I've talked to other people who hold space, that when whether it's a therapist or a teacher or a massage therapist or whatever, that by virtue of having a date at 10 o'clock to hold a space for someone else, it pulls attention off of one's personal woes into the moment, into presence to serve. And that, if we're bringing ourselves in our best, is a healing in itself, simply to have our highest invoked by the service to another. And when there's a formal container like that, built into the container is the invitation, built into the role. When one of us brings ourselves to serve another, built into the role is that reminder. Too bad there aren't more reminders with friends, family members, and lovers.
Right.
Bring our best. And this is where, I was telling a couple, and I think I was talking to a friend the other day about the same topic, that we aren't going to eliminate our shadowy, beastie aspects, our misbehavior, our the places we have undigested emotion and trauma, and we behave poorly.
Right.
That stuff is not going to go away tomorrow.
Right.
So I find myself,
maybe never.
yeah, I find myself advocating. Well, I was going to say two things, but I advocate lots of things. But one is, of course, to have a dedication to do our own work on what rises in relationship, so that mirroring quality serves our healing to the extent that we're willing to look in there and do work on finding out what is in there, what's unconscious, digesting the emotion, but also necessary, especially if we live together or we see each other a lot or we work together, but particularly an intimate relationship where the stuff gets going kind of the most heatedly, is the idea of containment and ways that we can, I counsel people to have a signal or a symbol, a signal, a sign that whenever things are heating up and you are about to exchange in a less than loving way, the first person to come to consciousness,
Yeah, the safe word.
safe word, stop, go take care of yourselves. Because sometimes we don't have it for each other. It'd be nice if we could just, I have a sweetie, and whenever things get even a little bit speedy, whenever I feel like full consciousness is not being brought between us, that suddenly maybe he goes a little unconscious in his eyes and just is moving around the space like everything's an object or something. I call us here, usually with a hug, because hugs, it's like the 20-second hug, grounding, soothing, the reminder that we are here to adore each other and that every moment is a precious moment for that. Now, that could annoy some people or manipulative, right? I'm going to, hug you every time you're unconscious. Some people are unconscious all day long. So it can get challenging. But this idea that I will contain as best I can the places where I am irresponsibly acting like a feral pig or a child, banging on the crib with my pacifier or whatever, my rattle. As soon as the signal goes off, it's like, okay, that's our agreement. Stop. Things like proper space. There are some situations I often kind of mediate between men and women who have very different, and everybody has different processing, etc. But for some, meandering through the day, having emotional content brought up anytime, or scheduling content brought up anytime, which I think we women often do that. We're just like, here's an emotion, here's a scheduling, we just everything all at once. And processors who are less of multitaskers and more like this, which men tend to be like, may need the containment of, let's talk about our schedule, after dinner for 15 minutes and keep those things to that time. Or if we're going to talk about difficulties in the relationship, let's save those for date night or meeting night, or this time. That level of containment allows some peace and some satisfaction for the one who's trying to get satisfaction, and some peace and clarity and sort of cleanliness for the one who's feeling overwhelmed. And I find that it's actually kind of amazing. The right phrase, the right piece of containment can completely shift a dynamic. I gave a man in a relationship, he felt like his sweetie would just start to take over and manage his life. And he felt like he was capable of managing his life. And so I gave him the phrase, I'm a big boy, to say, and you see the humor in it, and we got agreement that was what he would do. And now when she starts to do that, he says, I'm a big boy. And they both laugh and she backs off. Right. But if he were, and humor is such an amazing tool, in terms of creating some of these things that help everyone laugh and everyone come to a little consciousness. So but that containment is so useful for healing things, because there are things that just get triggered and not worked through over and over and over, because we're trying to get satisfaction for them. without setting a proper container. Like,
Mhm.
okay, we're settled now. Okay, I can hear you now, etc. So that's another piece.
Yeah, the containment. I like it. Yeah, something we did years ago, I like over 30 years ago, maybe we went to something, I can't remember the name of it. It was a couples workshop. And one thing has stuck that whole time, all these years, and it was that you make time every day to stop and exchange your strongest feeling of the day.
Ah,
And that's our container.
your strongest feeling of the day,
Yeah.
like
Well,
emotion.
what you just say, what was your strongest feeling today? Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And so it just has really created that space for holding whatever has happened. You have a time when you can bring that forward. Yeah. And you have that pause in between to be with it with your own, take responsibility for your own piece of that. And it's not related to each other all the time, but if it is, that's a space you can bring it to. So I like the idea of containment and structure for, just like we have a garbage can in our house. So we know where the garbage goes, and then the garbage goes out every week. That's a container, it's a structure for letting go of the things that could pile up and become a health risk, right? To the
Yeah.
environment. So it sounds similar, like metaphorically, what you're speaking of.
Yeah. And some of them can be things that are set, like date night, structures. Some can be things that are invoked in the moment, like this. I just counseled a couple. I invited them to, especially if they feel like the other person's having a lot of criticism or feedback for them. Um, I invited them to invoke, and this is something I've done in my relationships. Tell me 3 things you like about me. So that in those moments when we feel like you don't like me at all, tell me a few things you like about me can create some sweetness on the fly. Some other healing containers. For example, a lot of us didn't get the attention that we needed young. And so we're a little frozen in wanting attention. I just saw a crazy little video on Facebook of this woman. Her partner is buried in his computer, and the caption is something like, I'll do anything to get your attention. And she has a colander on her head, a couple spatulas hanging over her breasts, something else hanging on her waist, and she's got 2 metal spoons in her hand, and she's playing this music on this ridiculous outfit she has. And he looks up, and she's certainly getting his attention. And particularly with partners, often men, where their attention is sunk in their goal, it can be a real sticking point in relationship when one person loves to sink their attention into their focus and the other partner is craving their attention. And that can get really, and obviously, we each get to work through those places where we're frozen as a child, because a frozen child need can actually masquerade as an adult need. Like, of course, I need attention from you all day long. That's reasonable, but it's actually not.
Mm-hmm.
And so those needs can be met by creating a time where I pay attention to you and listen to you and how your day was, and you pay attention to me and listen to me and how my day was.
Yeah.
And and containers often also have certain rules, like you're just going to listen to me for my 10 minutes and I'm just going to listen to you for your 10. And this can be great also for inner child work, where we contract with each other when we're feeling a little young. Hey, is there a time in the next couple of days when you can hold me while I feel little? And then for 20 minutes, your big job is just to hold me and pay attention to me. And I'm just going to snuggle and feel like a 2-year-old. And how healing it is to have that, but how difficult it is to try and extort that from someone if you're not announcing it. And a lot of
Yeah, to know, to even know that you would need that, first of all, and then to be able to ask for it.
Yes.
And
And then
have somebody who's like receptive to that. It's like,
to be with a partner who's willing to do these things. And
yeah.
many of us don't have that partner. And I've had all kinds of partners in my life, ones who were more or less game. And I think as we leave the romance period where we'll do anything for anyone, because we think the person's like God's gift to us. And then after a while, we turn into just fellow humans. It can be challenging to prioritize the relationship and to care for it. And, my sense of relationship is it is so challenging unless you are just lucky and you happen into someone who, I don't know, is game and healthy and whole and doesn't poke you. And, let me know when you meet that person. I want to touch them. Um, but I forget where I was going. That sentence had no end. Alas.
I think I was tracking you and then I lost you.
I know I lost myself. Oh, I was just going to say that if we can't get all our needs met by one person. It's just silly.
Right.
And it's good to diversify. It's good to have friends. My sweetie's not a big mountain biker. It's fun to have a friend who mountain bikes like a maniac.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun to have a friend who will stay in a thrift store as long as I want to, etc. And finding those overlaps, I think, is part of kind of the creativity of relationship.
Yeah.
But we're kind of getting off the track of healing. There's so many aspects of it.
Well, I like this, what ideas come to me, like, it's like people that are collectors, right? Like, I always remember my grandmother was collecting thimbles and I could never figure out why. Why would anybody collect thimbles? I mean, they just went on a shelf on the wall, never were used or anything, but they all were unique and so forth. That was something back in that era that was attractive to her. But I do feel like I attract relationships. I collect relationships. I mean, that just seems like that's just been my experience now that we're talking about this. I have so many. And I love what you're saying, that there's ones that overlap, there's ones that fill a need that isn't filled in the marriage or with the children or the biological family. These other beings come into your life to reflect something that is held by that person in your life. So I like this idea that we're creating a fabric of relating, like a Indra's net.
Yeah. I'm thinking also, like, I don't have a huge number of needs these days. I have certainly had all kinds of needs over my lifetime. But I'm a pretty kind of full cup spilleth over sort of I almost said sort of a fellow these days. And the spiritual heart wants to give in every direction, sees this one and wants to give them the farm, and sees that one and wants to give them the farm. And so there has to be some kind of like gatekeeping. But I have need of someone to help me in the yard. And so I put a little ad out and I found this young man. He's 18. Hopefully he'll never watch any of my recordings as I talk about him. I won't mention anything private, but the relationship is obviously, how do I say this? To be a steady human being who shows up when you say you're going to show up, who shows up with love and warmth, automatically, that's a healing force for people. Mm-hmm. And when that exerts itself regularly, I'm here, I like you. I'm here, I like you. Wherever you're doing that, bonds start to be created. People lean into that because there are very few of us who had a reliable, positive, warm relationship in our lives. That in itself is healing. And though my work is very much about spirituality and about knowing the love that we are, and then bringing to consciousness the places where we are not moving from love, so that we might digest, have insight, heal, and move from love. There is, for example, in an 8-month course, people have the experience that is healing simply of other people's presence showing up in a benevolent, warm way over time. And we can find that healing, even if we feel, and I know people in my life, also in my work, for whom intimate relationship is just too much. It's too much. It's too triggering of their trauma or whatever. But they can, for example, go to the same yoga class every week with someone who's kind and warm, and experience, because the child inside doesn't differentiate, can experience, I am welcome here. This is warm. This teacher, every time I take their yoga class, they're kind. There's something healing about that. We don't need to enter into a living together, intimate partnership, have all our goop triggered. In fact, sometimes that can be unhealing. It can be hurtful if we overwhelm ourselves. The press is, oh, everybody should be in an intimate relationship, but it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone all the time. And depending upon what we carry, intimate relationship can be aggravating to our trauma. And so there's so many ways, even just having a friend or somebody in an old folks home that you go every Tuesday and read them a story. There's so many ways to have the healing warmth of relationship that isn't the whole template that the culture's obsessed about.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it makes me aware of these internal relationships we have, right? With all these parts that are relating and competing for attention and needs and so forth. And this outpicturing in our life of all the people who show up to reflect our interior, like there's, so much potential for projection, right? And so to get really clear, like in your own experience and immediate experience about trusting how you feel in your body. I mean, that's such an important thing about discerning truth, is the barometer of the body. I mean, for me, it's just become such an important piece of relating to myself first, and having that kind of trust, because you can't enter a relationship and have trust if you don't trust your own self and your own instincts and your own ability to care for yourself and regulate yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes, as you were speaking, I was thinking about how sometimes we get lucky and someone brings us something just by virtue of who they are and how they feel about us that is such a healing gift that we've never had from someone else. For example, I am extroverted and I like to break into song. I'm an odd human. I'm full of energy and weirdness and weird humor and whatever. And I usually love to befriend introverts who I then drive crazy. My parents are more introverted, etc. So all my life, I've had this kind of, we had just quiet down. You're kind of annoying us, kind of thing, which has been largely, I haven't been so aware of that. And the person that I'm closest to, is absolutely entertained and delighted by my bizarre and bubbling self and laughs, breaks into song with me. And this is just a feature of him. It's just an area he happens to be tuned to me. How healing that is. How healing it is when, let's say, you feel homely and someone thinks you're beautiful, or you feel like you should keep a lid on it and someone invites you out. And those things we can't expect other people to do that for us. But when we find someone who does, it can be such an amazing healing force to have that particular mistreatment or attitude toward oneself not be there, never mind be replaced by something warm and loving. And sometimes, for example, I have been in relationship with people who just love to feed me. They love to cook, and I love to be cooked for. Bonus. I feel like lifetimes of maybe being this hungry person, houseless, hungry person at the edge of society, lifetimes are being healed every time that they plop food in front of me.
Well, that is a big part of how we, everything comes down to energy, right? And we get energy from food, we get energy from attention, we get energy from being witnessed. I mean, there's just so much that we're unconscious of that drives us in terms of energy. And so that's one way, being fed. It's about the preparation, the creativity, the love, and the food itself. There's so much energy in that. Yeah.
Yeah. This is, I just, what popped up for me is another non-human relationship that I had with two pine trees that they were like sister pine trees that sat at the edge of the forest at my house. And, my dad and I would frequently have skirmishes that I would just be outraged by injustice and so hurt. And I would run and climb up those trees, one of them, and I alternated, run up the tree all the way to the top. They were white pines. So the very top of them swayed in the wind. So I would wrap myself around that tree and cry my heart out and be rocked. And that relationship was a key relationship in my childhood because my family didn't, my parents were born in the 30s. They didn't have lives of, emotional intelligence. That was not what people were about in the 40s and the 50s, and so to have a sanctuary with a being, there was a sense that there was this being. And those kinds of relationships, whether they are beings that are energetic beings not in body, relationships with ancestors, relationships with stuffed animals. My daughter had a number of what people called imaginary friends, but I'm not sure that they didn't have some kind of existence there because of her obvious she was getting some kind of need met through these beings. And as we learn more about all of the levels of beings in body and not in body that are available to us that we can call in, there can be so much healing in calling in forces and symbols, goddesses, beings, deities, dakinis, all of that to be with us.
Yeah. And the term imago in imago therapy, imago means mirror, right? Image or mirror. There's a body of work in couples therapy called imago. I think it was
heard of it, yeah.
Hendricks, right? Anyway, the concept is that we will attract a person into our life, generally our primary relationship, that will wound us in a way, will re-wound us in a way that we were originally wounded. Because nature is seeking balance and healing, it will bring to us things that will start working on the subconscious and bring these things up so that they are no longer hidden in the subconscious, but they come into the conscious awareness. So similar patterns of attracting a mate who's not emotionally available or too busy for you or something, if you had that in your childhood. So I feel like this is such a it's not an easy thing, but when we project it onto the other person that they're not providing this need and it's we feel victimized by it, we're missing the bigger picture, which is that this is something inside of us that is being reflected again in a relationship we've attracted, so that we can feel what's there or not there. And that's the invitation for the healing. But what happens is, generally, for people that aren't conscious of that invitation and that opportunity to heal, will project onto that person that they're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Try to change that person.
And then the other one, and there it goes. The whole,
Yeah.
The way we tangle all of those projections and attempted need filling things.
Yeah.
And
But isn't that a beautiful thing, that like nature will do that? Will always bring us what we need. And there's that saying that what's in the way is the way. So I just love that intelligence of nature that always wants everything to come to wholeness, and it will magnetically will draw to ourselves what can help us be whole if we're willing to go through.
And if we have resources.
And if we are, if we're
Like,
supported.
I really encourage people, if they're going to be in relationship, to have and to find and to arrange resources where they can keep up with what comes up, and where they can learn to take responsibility. This is what's, when you talk about the miracle of nature, it's like the miracle of suffering. Like, I know it's not fun, and I have had some gnarly, year after year, sometimes in relationship, just hard times trying to get to the bottom of something, or not giving up. I'm sort of a tenacious sort. And
Sort of a tenacious sort.
oh,
There's a lot of sorting in there.
and the role of suffering in reflecting to us that something is off, something needs healing,
Mm-hmm.
some method or strategy that we're using is not based on reality or on truth. It can be super challenging to sort those things out for ourselves in a relationship. What's mine? What's yours? Am I having a great intuition, or am I just in my stuff? Is your feedback something really about me, or is it about your mom? Those places. I find one of the joys of all of the work that I've done in my life. And, it doesn't hurt to have your instrument cleaned out by being open, right, to the holy.
Yeah, you had that.
But one of the glories of all of the work is how this instrument, this consciousness, is here and is often, in increasing levels of accuracy, actually picking up what's really going on and able to speak to it. So we can all experience these moments of tangling with another being, and then murky, what the heck, and to be able to have the life experience, the wisdom, the cleanliness, to be like, that's what's going on there. That's what's going on there. This is in there. That's in there. And then there's something else I don't even know about yet. And it's just so nice to be sane and to trust one's sensibilities. And that is another healing force in relationship, is if you have a relationship with someone who is relatively clear, whether it's your sweetie, your mom, your uncle, your spiritual teacher, to have someone to check perceptions with. I had someone early on in the work who would attend events with me, very sensitive, very high being. And is there something distracting there? I'm just noticing. Sorry to.
No, that's all right. I'm muting so there's no background noise. I'm totally tracking you and listening.
Oh, okay. Okay. I just wanted to pause if there's something that you need to attend to. I forget where I was. Alas.
You had a sensitive being in your.
Oh, yes. who early on in my work, I would confer with them at lunchtime or whatever, or after an event. Did you pick that up? I picked that up. And there was so much deepening in my trust of my capacities to sense in a non-ordinary way was completely strengthened by this person's companionship. And I think we all so value the people in our lives who we can go to and they're clear and they're straight and they help us kind of come to our own clarity.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I totally agree. And this whole idea of sensitivity is relational by nature, right? The sensitivity. And I feel like we have to have at least a dual, if not a quantum consciousness in order to process this, because we'll have these immature parts having an experience, and then this other part that can see the bigger picture in the same experience that can hold it better than the smaller part that is overwhelmed by something. There's other parts of us that can hold that perspective without being overwhelmed, and we have to be able to hold both simultaneously. It's not an either or, it's a both and bring the perspective of all the different dimensions of our self, our awareness, our sensitivity, and all the other parts in the picture to the recipe of what's here wanting to be known or met.
Yeah. Yeah. And such a good time to kind of, I always like to say something about trauma whenever I'm talking about almost anything. Because, the healing of trauma in relationship is a whole other level of things. And what I was thinking about when you were talking was how there are some beings who, if triggered in certain ways, can't hold on to the bigger perspective because the trauma goes pew, and how to navigate healing trauma in relationship often requires us to have a non-traditional way of relating with other people, because depending upon our relational trauma, there is absolutely nothing wrong with not having an intimate relationship or with conveying to someone in a friendship or whatever, hey, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, this is what I'll need to do if this happens, and navigating that kind of terms of engagement, and that there's people who carry trauma are not off the map of in fact, we're finding out that many people carry trauma, and to sort of normalize the challenges of trauma, that some of the things that we're speaking of may be very challenging for someone who's triggered, etc. I want to sort of
Thank you for voicing that. And I believe we all carry trauma because we're not born into a clean slate, right? We're born into a human condition. We're born into a bloodline, and they all have a history of trauma, and it gets carried and passed on. And so there's things that we may not have even experienced in this life that something can trigger in us that is traumatizing, and we don't really have any reference for it. So it is really important to just think of it like, for me, I remember when I had to have really serious surgery, and after the surgery my body was traumatized, and I was like living in a wounded animal for a while, and I was reacting in ways that I had never before, like having claustrophobia and things I'd never had before. All of a sudden, were in my field of awareness that I had to contend with, having no reference for until I put it together. So that it's something that we like you, I think you were the one who taught me to, about the creature, that our body is a creature, right? And it has a completely different reference for relating than our mind, right? And safety and ground and breath and these things, and how I think it's just been so helpful. And I've shared this with others that found it helpful too, to consider, how we have a pet, for example, an animal that relies on us. It relies on us for its structure, when it's going to get fed, when it's going to get walked, is it going to get played with, and attention. And if we just leave that animal without any food or water or attention, or knowing a time when to expect someone to come home, it gets very anxious and depressed, and all the things that go with that. And that's how, when we leave our body and go up in our head, or just are always in the past or future, that anxiety of the body kicks in because nobody's home. It doesn't know, like you said, that friendly person that's going to show up every consistently and be there, that you can lean into and trust. So it's just become more and more of a pattern in our culture to come up and out of the body and have anxiety as a result. And that's a trauma.
Yeah. And you're talking about, in a way, the level of healing in relationship with self, consciousness to flesh, and how necessary that is, and how often that's done in the presence of another healing consciousness. But lots can be done with oneself to start to recognize the patterns of mistreatment, and where they're conscious enough to interrupt and try something new. I know that I can remember a friend that I had in my 20s who would hold a space for me to actually come. The first time that she would look me in the eyes, and I didn't look at people in the eyes when I was in my 20s. I was too afraid to be seen. And she would call me out, call me, hey, hi. And how frightening that was at the beginning, but then how healing it was to actually, through her care, her love, and her noticing, to start to arrive here. I've had so many relationships, friendships, space holders, therapists, co-counselors, spiritual teachers, even once in a while, a phrase in a book or whatever that we're relating with other people's consciousnesses who have something for us to relate to that is healing. And I want to repeat that we don't have to keep that only to the human, that when we start to restore our attention to the present moment and to the energies in the present moment, even, for example, I'm leaning back in my chair, even the conscious taking in of the solid support of the chair under your body is healing. The conscious awareness that no one is around you in the space right now, hurting you, requiring anything of you, poking you, to have a consciousness of just the quiet, to have a feeling and allow yourself to completely take in the gentleness of a breeze. It's like the earth is constantly lovemaking through its offering of its sturdy ground to walk on, its breezes that caress our faces, the availability of somewhere to lie our bones down and rest. But in the felt experience and the felt relating to something that's there, there, as you said earlier, energies, there are energies in that conscious being present for, even being present for. Today, I had a little transaction with someone who I bought a little wicker love seat for the back of my house, this very delightful man. And I made I noticed when I got there, didn't have the change, and he let me have it for $5 less because I don't have a $5 bill. Anyway, in that exchange, to be present for the light in his eyes, the light in my eyes. I could see him seeing me. And then when he said, oh, you can have it for blah, blah, then I reached my hand out to shake his hand, like we were shaking on it. And there was humor and playfulness in it. And the energy of the handshake, the feel of his hand, it was a strong hand. He really gave me the handshake. Some men do, some men back off if they're shaking hands with a woman, but I'm very present in my handshakes. And
he was going to get his $5 out of your handshake.
Well, but it was both ways. It was a meeting of presence to presence, incarnation to incarnation. There was love. We were at the feast table in our handshake. And so many of our customs in our lives that we do unconsciously, handshakes, good morning, hello, how are you? Here's the salt. Many of those interactions, if we are here in our senses for them, there is healing, the healing energy of being present on the planet available and there for us to imbibe, but we have to be somewhere in the vicinity of our environment to take it in.
Yes, exactly. That is where consciousness is, like right there in that moment of that exchange. Is what it lives for, right? That's why it's here in these forms, is to exchange with itself. And when it happens and both people are aware and present and full and grateful, there's such an energy there that I could feel it when you're talking about it. I got the chills. I could just imagine, myself in that experience. I've had many of those moments, and it makes me want more. So thank you for that reminder.
It's the fun of being on Earth. I mean, right now I'm playing with the arena of open mics. As you know, I've been starting to be musical the last 2 years. And I had an open mic Monday night. It was me and my sweetie, and we usually play as a duo. But we invited up 3 other people, a mandolin player, a washboard player, and a stand-up bass player, and they played with us. And standing on that stage with those 4 men making music, there is something healing about taking in other people's presence, taking in, I am now on an airplane flanked by 2 big men who don't fit in their seats. And so I'm getting snuggled from both sides.
That's not how I would see it, but thank you.
I'm like, free hugs. The pat down, free massage. Hello.
Okay.
Depending on what we carry and what we're open to and whatever. The energy of other people's presence with us, the feeling, of sitting next to my dad on the couch. Now, if we had a discussion where I was trying to get his attention for seeing me authentically, it may or may not go well, but leaning against my dad's body, my 89-year-old dad's body, still a big guy, it's like, and noticing no harm, the presence of that, the affection of that, the simplicity of that, if we can, because for some of us, trauma will be triggered the minute we even put our attention in our bodies. And we need some trauma resolution work even to feel safe here, But the point is that whatever is benevolent and safe for us, to be present in our bodies for the relating, for the very grounded relating, is healing.
Well, we're going to wrap up, but I want to just give mention to the work you do, the holy work, and the connection that you help people make to that is also healing and grounding. And so that when we do get thrown off center by triggers and so forth, we have that relationship, no matter what, that we can trust and rely on, and we know how to fall into it. And it's always there, ever present. It doesn't ever change. Only the amount of attention we give it and availability we have for it changes that. So the work that you do with the Holy Work Challenge and the Living as Love courses that you offer. It's all about, nourishing that root, because just like a tree, there's no tree without a root. And there's no stability without a connection to source, and to make that conscious and nourish it, and provide the practices to keep it clean and clear and available, not to ourselves, but for others to tap into and feel stabilized by, is what you and I both do. And it's why we hold these conversations, to hopefully help others drop in and feel that connection as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And so much healing available in, there's just such a menu, such a feast of offerings these days, of people who are offering spaces within which to come to consciousness and do our work. And it's so my joy, as you know, it is yours,
Yeah.
to make ourselves available for people to deepen in their ability to embody the lit heart, so to speak.
The lit heart. I love it. And to witness it, witness things change in their lives as a result. It's really, really rewarding. So thank you for your part in that, in my life, and those that you serve, and for being here today. And we'll continue.
Yay.
Yes. So thank you again. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope that this has been helpful to you, and you're welcome to leave your comments and questions and suggestions for future topics. We'd like to hear from you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you all. Bye-bye for now.